I like the way you work it, no diggity. I got to bag it up.
Girl, you got it going on.
I like the way you work it, no diggity. I got to bag it up. I like the way you work it, no diggity. I got to bag it up. I like the way you work it, no diggity.
How we doing? Yeah? Are we feeling more pumped now? I was like, if people don't sing along to this song, they're dead to me. So front row, you guys are safe. The rest of you, there is still an opportunity to earn back my trust. Okay? So Michael put me on purpose, the third one after lunch when you all were falling asleep, because I like to do a little bit of audience participation before I start my talk. So who was here last year? Don't give it away for everyone else. You guys know what's coming. So we're just going to test and make sure that everything is running right. So we're going to do our unit tests first. Are you ready? Yes. Yes? Yes, okay. Let me try that again. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, cool. So I just want everyone to put their hands in the air like this for me. Perfect. All right, now if you've got things on your lap, just put them on the floor next to you, put them on the seat next to you, whatever. You can put your hands down, guys. It's all right. Yeah, cool. And I just want everyone to stand up. And sit down. Don't worry, though, you're going to get to do it again. All right? Okay, so we're going to try. Right, this is our feature test now. We're going to put those two unit tests together. I want you to stand up and put your hands in the air. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Have we figured out what we're doing yet? Yeah? Okay, are we ready for the integration test? Yes? Okay, so I'm going to explain the workflow to you, and then I'm going to get my phone out and I'm going to record it, and you're going to do it amazing this time. You've had 1 year of practice. Okay, at least half of you were here last year. So we're going to start on this side, right? Now, the people in the middle, you actually have the hardest job, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start on this side. We're all going to stand and put our hands in the air, and we're going to go this way. And then when we get to this end, we're going to go back the other way. I know, this is going to be amazing. You guys are going to crush it, okay? So people in the middle, it's your responsibility to keep it going, all right? We can't just stop, all right? Okay, are we ready? Oh, we're ready. Okay, hang on. I'm going to record it. Okay, so we're starting over here, and I'm going to count you in 1, 2, 3, and we're all going to stand up and put our hands in the air. Yeah? 1, 2, 3, go, 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 go. And coming back. Come on, middle group. Oh. We came back strong at the end. I think somewhere in the middle there was a jelly cube, though. So. Hi everyone, my name is Jo, for those of you who haven't met me before. This is my second year at Laracon AU. I am a Laravel and Next.js developer. I am obsessed with CSS. I am a UX research specialist, and I am also the digital experience lead at DevHouse, which is a fancy way of saying that it is my job to make sure that our customers and their users are happy. That's me. I think it's pretty convincing replica, personally. I have not always been in this role. I've had a lot of jobs in the past. Oh yeah, super. That's close enough to my slide. I've had a lot of job roles. It's been a really windy journey. I started out, for those of you who were here last year, I've talked a little bit about my journey in the mining industry. I've had my job role be process engineer, data analyst, product owner, project manager. I worked as an independent contractor, just me, by myself. And nowadays, my partner and I build Laravel applications for mainly nonprofits and NGOs. And today I'm going to talk to you about this guy. So this is going to be, who was here for Jack Skinner's talk last year with the trains? Yeah. Does anyone know what this is? It's satellite, kind of close, yeah. This is the Mars Climate Orbiter. It was launched in 1998, in December. They sent it off to Mars. It's a robotic space probe. And in September 1999, it crashed into the atmosphere of Mars. Okay, so mine's not quite like Jack's talk because I gave it away like straight away. But does anyone know why it crashed into the atmosphere of Mars? Metric units? Yeah, so it was built for NASA, scientific organization. And NASA works in SI units, or metric units. And the manufacturer of the space probe was Lockheed Martin, and they unfortunately work in Imperial. And somewhere along the way, they forgot to align on these two things, and as a result, crashed into Mars. So not ideal. And you might be wondering what this has to do with you and how you're going to take anything related to a space probe and apply it to your day-to-day work. So I want to preface this by saying not everything I talk about today is going to be relevant to everyone, but hopefully something I talk about today will be relevant to everyone. So on that note, let's find out who we've got in. I might just need house lights for a second so I can see you all because they're like shining in my face right now. Cool. Hands up if you are a one-woman or one-man band. Cool, a few of those. What about those of you who have a bigger team? Maybe you've got separate front-end and back-end, or you've got UX, or you've got QA. Yep, got a few of those. Cool, cool, cool. What about agency? Who works in an agency building stuff for other people? Who's working on internal projects? Cool. Who's working on established stuff, so you've already got an application and your job is maintaining it? Yeah, and who's working on new stuff, like building new products for clients or for themselves? So all of them, we've got all of those people here, right? So not everything I say is going to be relevant to everyone, but hopefully something that I say is going to at least make you think. And if you walk out of today's talk and you're like, I'm already doing everything Joe said, excellent. We agree on everything, we'll have a drink later, and maybe you can share some of what you're doing with other people in your network, and you'll have some new language that you can use to talk about it. So, something that I've noticed a lot, particularly with people who are new to development, I do a lot of teaching, and particularly with people who are self-taught or perhaps haven't been working on loads of different projects and stuff like that, is that they'll often start with the most visible things first. And it totally makes sense because particularly if we are working for a client, clients are really bad at understanding what we're trying to say to them unless they can see it, right? Has everyone experienced this? Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. It's really hard to explain without something tangible. So we often will start like this. We'll do like the requirements gathering, and then we maybe do some designs or some wireframes. Then perhaps we'll build out an interactive form and it does everything except for submit. Is this sounding familiar? You've all been guilty of it, right? So we work on Laravel projects, and what's the most important part of your Laravel projects? The meaty stuff. It's your models and your migrations and your controllers and all that kind of stuff, right? So a lot of the time we're leaving that right until the end, and we've already done half the project by the time we get there. That's kind of wild, isn't it? And you might be thinking, oh, but that's not really what I do. Maybe you start the other way around. Maybe you build out all of your models and your controllers and things first, and then you do your front end. I'm sure we've got lots of people in here who are way more happy working in PHP than they are working in HTML and CSS and all that kind of stuff. Yeah? Is that you? Yeah. And you're like, no, that's not me, Joe, because I start at the database and then I work my way up. Cool, but you still do it layer by layer if you're doing that. So regardless of which way you're approaching it, this is a really common thing that, the way that we think about it. Okay, I've done that bit, let's move on. So I'm going to take a step back and talk about this idea of architecture. Who has had the term architect in their role at any point in their professional career? Yeah, you're all like, me? Are you going to judge me for that? No, I'm not. It's fine, because it's software development, and we're very fast and loose with the term architect and engineer. Yeah? Fun story about that. Ask me tonight, or my partner who's around somewhere, about the term architect. But in one of my old roles, I would work really closely with the database administrators and the people who were maintaining the infrastructure. So when we were talking about architecture, or they were talking about architecture, the things that they meant and what they thought of when they said architecture was really different to the people that perhaps I studied with when I was doing my UX training, where there was an entire specialist area called information architecture. So they're both using the same term, but it means something completely different depending on what part of the journey you're in. Yeah? So what I did is I put together what I thought are some of the different fields that we might, or the different parts of a project that we might engage in that could conceivably be considered architecture, and this is what I came up with. Now, you might not agree with the layer that I've put these things in, and you might not agree with the terms or whether this falls into architecture or not, and it actually doesn't matter, because again, my goal is to get you thinking about this stuff. But what you might notice as you look at this is that a couple of these things, database design and information architecture, are pretty far apart, right? So I think most of us understand what database design is. So we're working with applications that are based on databases, because we're all Laravel developers here, or soon to be Laravel developers, if this is your first time being exposed to it. And when we are planning out like our migrations and our models and our controllers and stuff like that, we're not necessarily thinking about how we're going to handle like that particular thing in a drop-down on a page that we did a Figma design for a month ago, right? Or that maybe we're not even involved with the front end of. And information architecture, I mentioned that that's a term that's used in UX, and it's a specific field of UX. And what it is how users access information. It's not about how that information is stored. So our database is how we store and access the information via code, but information architecture is how users access that information. It's about how it's laid out on a page. Some examples are navigation menus. That's a really easy to understand example of information architecture. Another one is, let's say you've got an index page. You're showing a list of posts, right? And you've got a bunch of tiles, and each post has specific information on it. It might be the date or the author or whatever it is. What is displayed and how that is displayed, what filters you can use to show a certain list of those posts. All of that is information architecture. And that's usually done by the front-facing team. It's done by the people who are talking to the users. Or it's done at the time that you're talking to the users, because again, you're not necessarily doing your database design and your information architecture at the same time, even if it's the same person that's doing those two things. And the problem is that once we have that problem, we then end up with stuff like this. And we've probably all been in a situation where you think to yourself, I wish I had known that earlier. And sometimes you're the person that should have told you that earlier. And sometimes it's a client, and sometimes it's someone else in your team. The most obvious one of these that I think is really easy for people to understand is this: I need a filter for whatever, right? So let's imagine for a second that we've got a table, and that table lists users or products or posts or whatever it is, and you have a filter that allows you to show just a certain number of those things, yeah? Now, let's say that they're products, and I've got a whole bunch of pieces of information about my products. And one of those pieces of information is what fabric it's made out of. But when I'm first setting this up, I go, oh, well, I'm just going to have attributes, and I'm going to store the fabric in the attributes. Now, let's not go into whether or not that was the right choice. We're going to assume for the moment that it probably wasn't, but for whatever reason, we made that choice at the time. And so in that attributes, we've got whether it's cotton or nylon, but we've also got whether it's machine washable, whether it's eco-friendly, all of this other information. And then your client comes to you and says, I would like a filter for material. So you've got two options now. You can either rewrite your database schema, which is probably, honestly, the better option. And then you have to do migrations, and you have to move all of your data across, and it's going to be a nightmare, and you're going to hate your life. The alternative is that you're going to hate your life even more because you're going to do something really hacky, like start making like an enum or something and be like, okay, if it's in this list, then we're going to, like, no one wants that. Not a single person wants that, right? Another example, we had a customer come to us recently and be like, we want to have one of those fancy searches where, like on the Apple website, where like you type something in and it auto-suggests a bunch of stuff, shows you a little thumbnail. So they're a retail site, and they, for ages, sold their own products, and then they were like, we're going to start also stocking or like reselling stuff through a marketplace. But the marketplace products had completely different stuff in them. And it was kind of a bolt-on. It was never intended to be a thing they were going to sell through their website. It was just like their stores stock these things on the side. And then they were like, no, but we have decided we want the marketplace stuff to be rolled in and we want the search to show both. Which is fine, except for that when you put like Laravel Scout on there, it does not like it when you have two completely different models that don't share any of that information, and you start having to do stuff which is really, really hard because you don't have data models set up where you can achieve that easily in a performant way. And so these are examples where something that maybe made sense at the time didn't make sense when you looked at in the big picture of where you needed to be. And what we end up with here is what I like to call accidental architecture. It's where we've done something, we're like, look, it'll be fine, we'll just do this because this seems like the right thing to do at the time, but then we have to deal with the repercussions of it later. And those repercussions usually are either having to refactor something, which is soul crushing, or just having to deal with it and ending up with code that's not the best version of what we could produce. So how do we avoid it? Well, tip one is to work in vertical slices. I'm just going to ask quickly, can we turn the house lights down? Because like now I can see you all and it's very daunting. So yeah, thank you. Excellent. Now the focus is on me, which is how I like it. So some of the stuff I'm going to talk about is going to remind you of a few of the frameworks that are out there that you might have heard of. And I think it's really useful to get familiarization with as many frameworks as possible so that you can understand these concepts and then take whatever it is that works for you and then leave the rest. And so you might hear some of the things I'm talking about and be like, isn't that just domain-driven design, Joe? Some of it maybe is, and that's fine. You might be like, isn't that just agile that you're talking about? And I'm like, no, because agile is agile. And what I'm talking about is totally different and not at all the same, and maybe also a little bit the same. So I give you permission to pick and choose what you want to take away from what I'm going to suggest, and also what you take away from any of these design frameworks. And if you think that you need a little bit more structure around what you're doing than what I'm suggesting, then go and check a couple of those ones out. So let's say that instead of approaching things layer by layer, we do our requirements gathering first, and then we take kind of a here's what we're thinking approach. So everyone gets on the same page, and before we move on to the next feature, we're just going to focus on one section of our application, right? We're not going to do all of the design first. Maybe we're going to go and build a bit of our database and a bit of our front end. Maybe we're going to agree on like our brand guidelines or something. And we're going to get feedback well before we're finished with the project. I know, this is completely novel, right? You never have done this yourselves. But we're going to repeat this process so that we're tackling discrete vertical slices rather than whole layers. So instead of doing all of our front end and all of our back end and then agreeing on an API spec, we're going to, like wild, I know, agree on that first and then over time make sure that we're aligning as we go. Now, when we do this, did anyone notice the monkey? Yes. Yeah? Does anyone know what the monkey is doing? He is reciting Shakespeare. Someone said it. If you haven't heard of this monkey analogy here, basically the idea is that someone's got this great idea for like a art piece. And the art piece is, like, you just have to use your imagination here. There's a pedestal. And on top of the pedestal is a monkey, and he's dressed in like a Shakespeare outfit. And the monkey is reciting a really famous Shakespeare play. Sounds really cool, right? I'd watch that. So what's the first thing we do to make this art piece come to life?
Build the pedestal.
We absolutely do not build the pedestal. Wrong answer, Mish. You're fired. So the thing is that building a pedestal is a solved problem. We don't know whether or not we can even source a monkey. So what we are going to do is we're going to approach this vertical slice by doing the monkey first. Now, something you want to avoid is tackling your easy slices first, but sometimes you have to do a little bit of the easy stuff before you can get right into the hard stuff. So I like to think of it as we have to ethically source a monkey before we can teach it Shakespeare. So an example of this, we got approached to do a project to build an application for use in a retail showroom. So if you think about a retail showroom, they don't have all of their products there. It's not like a regular store where you walk in, find a product, buy it, and leave. They need to be able to search and find products and process sales and do quotes for people, ring up lay-bys, all of that kind of stuff. But the catch was that they needed this to be able to be used by all of the sales staff. When they were using it, it needed to be logged in as that particular sales staff, but they only had one computer. They needed people to be able to change really fast between who was the logged in user. And they were like, it's not going to be practical to type in a username and password each time because it's also a touch screen. There's no keyboard on there by default. And we're like, okay, sure. So in this particular case, the monkey was, how the heck do we do that? And sourcing the monkey was just building up basic authentication so we had something that we could test around and play with. So I would recommend that you try and figure out as early as possible what is your monkey and don't move forward with anything else until you've got a proof of concept, at which point then you can move on to your next vertical slice. Your quick wins are not going to be the things that catch you up later, like the things that you go, oh God, I wish I hadn't have done that. Like that's not the things that are going to be a problem. And because they're quick wins, if they are a problem, you can just redo them and it's not going to be as soul crushing. If you're not already doing it, like try to work in your monkey slices really early. And something that I will point out is that this is harder with the more team members that you've got. Because when you've got one person, you've got all of your motivation early on, and you're like ready to go, and you can just tackle that monkey head on. But if you've got lots of team members, you might want to build up a little bit of momentum first. So just keep that in mind, depending on the size of your team. It also gives you an opportunity to fail early because you're more likely to identify those architectural problems when you're focusing on the new and hard things and not when you're doing just like regular CRUD operations. So the second tip is to develop a shared understanding. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. And this might seem like a thing that is only applicable to teams. But I would argue that it's just as applicable and in this day and age, probably even more applicable sometimes to people who are working as individuals because this shared understanding might be between your past and future self, or it might be between you and your AI agents. So here are 4 things that I think are really useful to have in a team to make sure that you are approaching your architecture in a full stack way. So the first thing is laws. And when I say laws, I don't mean your operating practices. We're not talking about never push to main, right? We're not talking about always have separation of concerns. These are not the laws that I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is, for example, we preference good user experience for our customers over making sure that a payment goes through. So we work a lot with charities, and we have a particular charity that's like a membership organization. And for them, they have like, their members maybe donate $25 a month, right? So it's not very much money, but over the lifespan of that individual, that ends up being $300 a year. So if they're a member for 5 years, that's quite a lot of money that they've then contributed into the charity pool. So for them, do you think that they particularly care if one $25 payment fails? Like that's not a thing that's super important for them. It is a lot more impactful to keep that member for 5 years than it is to make sure you get that single $25 payment. So these are the underpinning things that the whole team needs to understand are important for the project to be considered a success. They're the things that you really need to do, and I would say that if you are working with clients, this is a critical thing to do because you can agree these are the laws that we're all operating by, and when they change their mind later, which they inevitably will do, you can say, you're breaking the law now, and then you can charge them for that. You're welcome. So the second thing is responsibilities. And when I say responsibilities, I'm not necessarily talking about who is responsible for doing something. It's not about assigning responsibility. It's about acknowledging responsibility. You want to identify who do you need to ask if something is going to change? Who needs to have weigh-in and buy-in on that change? If we want to add a new column or a new filter or something onto a page on the front end, who do we need to talk about to make sure that's even possible? right? Who do we need to consult on that change? Or what do we need to consult on that change? If we've got a design system, is that the responsibility of the design team, or is that the responsibility of the front-end developers? It's both. It's a shared responsibility, right? So it's about acknowledging who has buy-in and who has weigh-in on those decisions. The third one is a glossary. And I'm sure, has anyone here ever worked in the mining industry? A few hands, yeah, it's fine. I can kind of see them. You can put it down again. They're starting to fall asleep and I don't want to know. So in the mining industry, we have like a lot of TLAs. Do you know what TLA stands for? 3-letter acronyms, yeah. So it was really important to have a glossary, and sometimes we would have the same TLA across 3 different departments, and they all meant different things. So this happens in development as well. We have terms all the time where it means one thing to a front-end developer and a completely different thing to someone in DevOps or someone in design or someone who's working in back-end, right? We also will have terms that, particularly if we're working with a third-party client, they're going to have language that they use internally that is familiar to them, that maybe has a different meaning to you or no meaning to you. And likewise, vice versa. So make sure that all of your stakeholders are aligned, right? And document that so that you can avoid miscommunication. If you both have the same term for something and it means something different to each of you, make sure that you write down all of the meanings and who uses those meanings. And if you need to, come up with intermediate language that you can both use that will align you on the things that you're talking about. You can even go a step further and you can use that same shared terminology throughout the entire life cycle of your project. You can have the same term for an ID on a field on a form as you do in your database. And I would encourage you to do that. That's a law that we have inside our business, is that we always will use consistent terminology. And our kind of approach is we believe someone should be able to look at the ERD without an understanding of database design, who is familiar with the project, and be able to tell what it's doing because they don't have to try and figure out our arbitrary naming conventions. We keep all of this stuff in a documentation folder. It's just markdown files, and we keep it, and then we link to it from our README. And the reason that we do that is because that way people in the team who are not coders, who are not developers, can still access it. They can just go straight to GitHub, they can see the README, and they can click through to the documentation. The last one is milestones. Decide on your slices as early as possible, or at least get a vague idea of like what they're going to be and what order you need to tackle them in, which ones are going to be bigger and which ones are going to be smaller, and communicate in between each one with each other, with the whole team, or go back and review against it yourself and update your documentation if things have changed so that your AI is not looking at the old documentation, for example. And give yourself incremental opportunities to figure out whether you've gone off the rails, whether or not there's potential for you to go off the rails if you keep going in the direction that you're traveling, or if you maybe need to make some course corrections. And I really want to reiterate that this is not a weekly check-in, right? It's not a Scrum meeting, and it is not a retrospective. It is fast, honest communication at each milestone. And these are not sprints, right? This is not a like every 2 weeks or every whatever your sprint is. You might have a single vertical slice might take 4 sprints if you are working on a sprint cycle. It could take a week, it could take a day, it could take a month. They don't have to be fixed lengths, so not every milestone is going to be the same distance apart, and it's not time-based, it's project-based. It's when this thing is done. If you make this task onerous, if you make it hard, nobody will do it. That's why Scrum doesn't work. Sorry. So make it easy and make it as useful as possible, and it doesn't even have to be in real time. It could be async. You could do this over Slack, right? The last tip, and I know it's really lame, is the best way to embrace full stack architecture is to just get really comfy floating around in all those different layers. Like, even if you're a back-end developer, go and ask the designer if you can buy them coffee and be like, what are the things that you struggle to communicate to us as developers? If you have a DevOps team, Go and ask them if they want to join you for after-work drinks, and then be like, what are the things that we do or say that make you want to call in sick? And how can we avoid them or make them less painful, right? And if someone comes to you and is poking around and kind of asking prying questions, think about why they might be doing that and answer them as helpfully and honestly as you can, because ultimately it's going to make all of you better and you're going to develop better products. That's it from me today. I went 10 seconds over, so hopefully Michael will not refuse to have me back on stage again. Thanks for having me back again. If you want to catch up, here's all the places you can find me.
Well done once again. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Excellent. I got these highly fashionable bootleg 3D printed Bruces that Joe made. They're
Yeah.
bootleg, they're not official. She
wants
tries
one?
to sell them
You
to you,
want
we're going to have problems.
Yeah?
All right, now we're going to talk about your skirt. The skirt is, of course, custom made.
The skirt is custom made.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah. How long did it take? A couple of days. Yeah.
Not bad.
It has really big pockets in it. Yeah.
Big pockets.
Thanks for noticing.
In your experience, what's the best place to source a thespian monkey from?
Look, it depends on your region. Yeah, and there are also a lot of different types of monkeys, so you probably want to settle on that first.
Okay. Do you have any tips or tricks on breaking down silos between differing roles?
Yeah, I really do. It's particularly if you've got like different teams that sit in different places, or if you're remote, I would encourage you to shadow each other. And this is a thing that I used to do back when I was working as a product owner, is I would just be like, hey, DevOps team, can I just come sit with you for a day? And I encourage all of my students to do the same thing if they're looking at getting into a different role, but also if they just want to understand better about how the different teams operate, because you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know what questions to ask. If you just go and sit next to the team and just absorb via osmosis everything that they're complaining about, that is going to make it so much easier for your teams to communicate.
Perfect. No worries. Thank you once again, Joe.